Hello. Hi, Lunar Aurora, and Shin-chan, Bullbird. Seems like sound is okay. I don't think I need to monitor or anything. I need some food. It is reading time. Today, we are going to be reading... Oops, sorry. Sorry for the moving. Afro Sage, thank you for the subscription for the 22nd month. And thanks, Chunk, as well. Thank you for the hype train already. How was your day so far? It's been good. I haven't really done much. I've been very sore though, because I had a Pilates class yesterday, and now I'm very much worn out. Thank you, Sinfed. Hi Latiosi. What made you decide to read on stream? Well, I've been wanting to do it for a long time, but I think it's just about like kind of pushing myself to do it by just making that announcement. So, because other times if I kind of don't make it clear from the beginning that it's just a reading stream or just chatting stream, I always end up singing or feeling like I probably should sing. Hi, Toothlessu. Hi, Salem. Rockwell, thank you. My computer's being loud right now. Oh well. Yeah, but I'm not sure how long the stream will be, but I'll do my best to chill for a bit. And I think maybe if I read too much of it, then I'm not sure people will be able to catch all of it. But Wizard of Groovy, thank you for subscribing for the 10th month. Just Real Local, thank you for the 5 bits. And we're going to read, as I said in the title, Tuesdays with Morrie, a book that I recently got to read, and I really enjoyed it. I read it very quickly, and I thought I should share it with you all because it shares a very beautiful message. Suika Michu, hi! Hi, Lord Saberstrike. Early stream equals 2 this year, yes. And we'll stop in between like chapters and stuff in sections if you guys want to talk about anything in regards to the story or anything else. Yeah, or if we want to like ask about certain words, or if you want to ever correct my pronunciation on something, I might also just in the middle look up pronunciation for things because I'm trying to learn, because I feel like when you read things in your head, you have a hard time always looking up the words that you don't know, whereas when you're reading things out loud, you have that pressure to kind of figure it out. Yeah, so these days I've been a lot more conscious of words I don't know how to pronounce. Hi, Gamer Nate. Yeah, so we can go ahead and get started. Hi, Tinshang. And hi, Sydney, or maybe we'll have a few more minutes of hellos. We have a Hydrate Redemption. Okay. And if any of you have already read this book, I hope you don't mind. I don't mind reading this one again, like right after having read it, because I feel like there's a lot that I wanted to revisit. What's a frog book you have in the background? Oh, this one's lovely too. This one's called The Little Frog's Guide to Self-Care. I got this from my sister. It's just all the illustrations are of this frog wearing really fancy shoes. Yeah, so you have a lot of beautiful messages. We can read through this one too, if you guys are interested. This is one of my favorite things that I have in my home. It's a very relatable book. I really felt this one yesterday because I had a bunch of dishes that I didn't really want to do. Yeah. I'm usually quite good with doing dishes, but yesterday was one of those days when I was like, oh, I really don't want to do this, but I did it anyway. BRB while I heat my food. Oh, okay, Skak, no problem. Alright. So, let's get started. This is called Tuesdays with Morrie, an old man, a young man, and life's greatest lesson. And hello, Owen. I believe this is a picture of Morrie right here, if you guys are interested. And he's dancing. I love this picture. Alright. Hello, Insani. So glad to catch us. Oh! I'm glad Harper will try. Welcome. Welcome in, everyone. Just get comfortable and do what you need to do. I'll just be here in the background. So. The curriculum. The last class of my old professor's life took place once a week in his house, by a window in the study where he could watch a small hibiscus plant shed its pink leaves. The class met on Tuesdays. It began after breakfast. The subject was the meaning of life. It was taught from experience. No grades were given, but there were oral exams each week. You were expected to respond to questions, and you were expected to pose questions of your own. You were also required to perform physical tasks now and then, such as lifting the professor's head to a comfortable spot on the pillow or placing his glasses on the bridge of his nose. Kissing him goodbye earned you extra credit. No books were required, yet many topics were covered, including love, work, community, family, aging, forgiveness, and finally, death. The last lecture was brief, only a few words. A funeral was held in lieu of graduation. Although no final exam was given, you were expected to produce one long paper on what was learned. That paper is presented here. The last class of my old professor's life had only one student. I was the student. And my cat is about to use his litter box, so please excuse the rustling in the background. Okay. So this next part is in italics, so it's a flashback. It is the late spring of 1979, a hot, sticky Saturday afternoon. Hundreds of us sit together, side by side, in rows of wooden folding chairs on the main campus lawn. We wear blue nylon robes. We listen impatiently to long speeches. When the ceremony is over, we throw our caps in the air, and we are officially graduated from college, the senior class of Brandeis University in the city of Waltham, Massachusetts. For many of us, the curtain has just come down on childhood. Afterward, I find Morrie Schwartz, my favorite professor, and introduce him to my parents. He is a small man who takes small steps, as if a strong wind could, at any time, whisk him up into the clouds. In his graduation day robe, he looks like a cross between a biblical prophet and a Christmas elf. He has sparkling blue-green eyes, thinning silver hair that spills onto his forehead, big ears, a triangular nose, and tufts of graying eyebrows. Although his teeth are crooked and his lower ones are slanted back, as if someone had once punched them in, when he smiles, it's as if you just told him the first joke on earth. He tells my parents how I took every class he taught. He tells them, "You have a special boy here." Embarrassed, I looked at my feet. Before we leave, I hand my professor a present, a tan briefcase with his initials on the front. I bought this the day before at a shopping mall. I didn't want to forget him. Maybe I didn't want him to forget me. "Mitch, you are one of the good ones," he says, admiring the briefcase. Then he hugs me. I feel his thin arms around my back. I am taller than he is, and when he holds me, I feel awkward, older, as if I were the parent and he were the child. He asks if I will stay in touch, and without hesitation I say, "Of course." When he steps back, I see that he is crying. And for some context, by the way, this book was published in 1997, just to let you guys know if you're confused about any of the context. Yeah. Oh yeah, so another reason I'm not singing is because I have to keep clearing my throat these days. So excuse me if I have to take water breaks here and there. Friday morning with Tuesday with Morrie. Oh yeah, it is Friday. And happy February, by the way. Happy February. The syllabus. His death sentence came in the summer of 1994. Looking back, Morrie knew something bad was coming long before that. He knew it was the day he gave up dancing. He had always been a dancer, my old professor. The music didn't matter. Rock and roll, big band, the blues, he loved them all. He would close his eyes and with a blissful smile begin to move to his own sense of rhythm. It wasn't always pretty, but then he didn't worry about a partner. Morrie danced by himself. He used to go to this church in Harvard Square every Wednesday night for something called Dance Free. They had flashing lights and booming speakers, and Morrie would wander in among the mostly student crowd wearing a white t-shirt and black sweatpants and a towel around his neck, and whatever music was playing, that's the music to which he danced. He'd do the Lindy to Jimi Hendrix. He twisted and twirled. He waved his arms like a conductor on amphetamines until sweat was dripping down the middle of his back. No one there knew he was a prominent doctor of sociology with years of experience as a college professor and several well-respected books. They just thought he was some old nut. Once, he brought a tango tape and got them to play it over the speakers. Then he commandeered the floor, shooting back and forth like some hot Latin lover. When he finished, everyone applauded. He could have stayed in that moment forever. But then the dancing stopped. He developed asthma in his 60s. His breathing became labored. One day he was walking along the Charles River, and a cold burst of wind left him choking for air. He was rushed to the hospital and injected with adrenaline. A few years later, he began to have trouble walking. At a birthday party for a friend, he stumbled inexplicably. Another night, he fell down the steps of a theater, startling a small crowd of people. "Give him air!" someone yelled. He was in his 70s by this point, so they whispered old age and helped him to his feet. But Morrie, who was always more in touch with his insides than the rest of us, knew something else was wrong. This was more than old age. He was weary all the time. He had trouble sleeping. He dreamt he was dying. Yes, Teo? Yeah? Okay, sorry. He began to see doctors. Lots of them. They tested his blood, they tested his urine, they put a scope up his rear end and looked inside his intestines. Finally, when nothing could be found, one doctor ordered a muscle biopsy, taking a small piece out of Morrie's calf. The lab report came back suggesting a neurological problem, and Morrie was brought in for yet another series of tests. In one of those tests, he sat in a special seat as they zapped him with an electrical current, an electric chair of sorts, and studied his neurological responses. "We need to check this further," the doctors said, looking over his results. "Why?" Morrie asked. "What is it?" "We're not sure. Your times are slow." His times were slow. What did that mean? Finally, on a hot, humid day in August 1994, Morrie and his wife Charlotte went to the neurologist's office, and he asked them to sit before he broke the news. Morrie had amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, sorry, it's hard for me to pronounce, ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, a brutal, unforgiving illness of the neurological system. There was no known cure. "How did I get it?" Morrie asked. Nobody knew. "Is it terminal?" "Yes." "So I'm going to die?" "Yes, you are," the doctor said. "I'm very sorry." He sat with Morrie and Charlotte for nearly 2 hours, patiently answering their questions. When they left, the doctor gave them some information on ALS, little pamphlets as if they were opening a bank account. Outside, the sun was shining and people were going about their business. A woman ran to put money in the parking meter. Another carried groceries. Charlotte had a million thoughts running through her mind. How much time do we have left? How will we manage? How will we pay the bills? My old professor, meanwhile, was stunned by the normalcy of the day around him. Shouldn't the world stop? Don't they know what has happened to me? But the world did not stop. It took no notice at all, and as Morrie pulled weakly on the car door, he felt as if he were dropping into a hole. Now what? He thought. And, sorry. Thank you, Skak, for the 45 stream streak. I'm just going to read things in between just so that I don't miss them for too long. So, you don't think you're allowed to read this because it's Friday? No. We can enjoy Tuesday on a Friday. Yes, we can. I read this one on a Monday when I first read it, I think. Monday or Sunday? Yeah. As my old professor searched for answers, the disease took him over day by day, week by week. He backed the car out of the garage one morning and could barely push the brakes. That was the end of his driving. He kept tripping, so he purchased a cane. That was the end of his walking free. He went for his regular swim at the YMCA, but found he could no longer undress himself, so he hired his first home care worker, a theology student named Tony, who helped him in and out of the pool and in and out of his bathing suit. In the locker room, the other swimmers pretended not to stare. They stared anyhow. That was the end of his privacy. In the fall of 1994, Morrie came to the hilly Brandeis campus to teach his final college course. He could have skipped this, of course. The university would have understood. Why suffer in front of so many people? Stay at home, get your affairs in order. But the idea of quitting did not occur to Morrie. Instead, he hobbled into the classroom, his home for more than 30 years. Because of the cane, he took a while to reach the chair. Finally, he sat down, dropped his glasses off his nose, and looked out at the young faces who stared back in silence. My friends, I assume you are all here for the social psychology class. I have been teaching this course for 20 years, and this is the first time I can say there is a risk in taking it, because I have a fatal illness. I may not live to finish the semester. If you feel this is a problem, I understand if you wish to drop the course. He smiled, and that was the end of his secret. ALS is like a lit candle. It melts your nerves and leaves your body a pile of wax. Often it begins with the legs and works its way up. You lose control of your thigh muscles so that you cannot support yourself standing. You lose control of your trunk muscles so that you cannot sit up straight. By the end, if you are still alive, you are breathing through a tube in the hole in your throat, while your soul, perfectly awake, is imprisoned inside a limp husk, perhaps able to blink or cluck a tongue, like something from a science fiction movie, the man frozen inside his own flesh. This takes no more than 5 years from the day you contract the disease. Morrie's doctors guessed that he had 2 years left. Morrie knew it was less. But my old professor had made a profound decision. Once he had begun to construct the day, he came out of the doctor's office with a sword hanging over his head. Do I wither up and disappear, or do I make the best of my life? He had asked himself. He would not wither. He would not be ashamed of dying. Instead, he would make death his final project, the center point of his days. Since everyone was going to die, he could be of great value, right? He could be research, a human textbook. Study me in my slow and patient demise. Watch what happens to me. Learn with me. Morrie would walk that final bridge between life and death and narrate the trip. The fall semester passed quickly. The pills increased. Therapy became a regular routine. Nurses came to his house to work with Morrie's withering legs to keep the muscles active, bending them back and forth as if pumping water from a well. Massage specialists came by once a week to try to soothe the constant heavy stiffness he felt. He met with meditation teachers and closed his eyes and narrowed his thoughts until his world shrunk down to a single breath, in and out, in and out. One day, using his cane, he stepped onto the curb and fell over into the street. The cane was exchanged for a walker. As his body weakened, the back and forth to the bathroom became too exhausting, so Morrie began to urinate into a large beaker. He had to support himself as he did this, meaning someone had to hold the beaker while Morrie filled it. Most of us would be embarrassed by all this, especially at Morrie's age. But Morrie was not like the most of us. When some of his close colleagues would visit, he would say to them, "Listen, I have to pee. Would you mind helping? Are you okay with that?" Often to their own surprise they were. In fact, he entertained a growing stream of visitors. He had discussion groups about dying, what it really meant, how societies had always been afraid of it without necessarily understanding it. He told his friends that if they really wanted to help him, they would treat him not with sympathy, but with visits, phone calls, a sharing of their problems the way they always shared their problems, because Morrie had always been a wonderful listener. For all that was happening to him, his voice was strong and inviting, and his mind was vibrating with a million thoughts. He was intent on providing that the word dying was not synonymous with useless. The new year came and went. Although he never said it to anyone, Morrie knew this would be the last year of his life. He was using a wheelchair now, and he was fighting time to say all the things he wanted to say to all the people he loved. When a colleague at Brandeis died suddenly of a heart attack, Morrie went to his funeral. He came home depressed. "What a waste," he said. "All those people saying all those wonderful things, and Irv never got to hear any of it." Morrie had a better idea. He made some calls, he chose a date, and on a cold Sunday afternoon, he was joined in his home by a small group of friends and family for a living funeral. Each of them spoke and paid tribute to my old professor. Some cried, some laughed. One woman read a poem. "My dear and loving cousin, your ageless heart, as you move through time, layer on layer, tender sequoia." Morrie cried and laughed with them. And all the heartfelt things we never get to say to those we love, Morrie said that day. His living funeral was a rousing success. Only Morrie wasn't dead yet. In fact, the most unusual part of his life was about to unfold. And that is the end of the syllabus, that chapter. You want to have the privilege of nightly readings. I will try to read more on stream. Thank you all so much for listening, by the way. Let me know if you have any questions or you need clarification or something to be read again. Pi has been redeemed. 3.1593334336433337532937169339374945923078164628699862899862 This is the second book associated with the subject of death for Yeju in a row. It's not the second, actually. It's like the... Well, not in a row, but... I read so many about death, actually, this past month. And the one I'm currently reading, When Breath Meets Air, is also about death. One Bigly, thank you for for the bits. And thanks Talisman Solutions for gifting a sub to RJ. Oh man, Talisman Solutions, thank you so much for the 9 gift subs to the community. I really appreciate it. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Death is interesting to read. I think it depends on the perspective you take. One of the things I found so charming about this book is that, that last point they made, which is like, societies had always been afraid of it without necessarily understanding it. So I feel like, a lot of people I've spoken to too, one of my favorite questions to ask people is actually what they're most afraid of, if they think they know what it is. And a lot of people have actually told me that they're most afraid of death. And I think I found that to be a really interesting trend. And I think the reasons why we fear death is they're often, like, I think I would agree that it's often stems from like a kind of lack of understanding, maybe, or this pressure to live life a certain way. And I think this book is one of those stories that really kind of eliminates all those misconceptions maybe about how you're supposed to live to be of value to society or to those around you. That's why I really want to share it. And thank you, Talisman Solutions, for the 1,111 bits. I really appreciate that as well. Thank you so much. Thanks, Michinom. I've lived enough that I don't fear death. Only 11 days? Yes. So the next chapter is called The Student. At this point, I should explain what had happened to me since that summer day when I hugged my dear and wise professor and promised to keep in touch. I did not keep in touch. In fact, I lost contact with most of the people I knew in college, including my beer-drinking friends and the first woman I ever woke up with in the morning. The years after graduation hardened me into someone quite different from the strutting graduate who left campus that day, headed for New York City, ready to offer the world his talent. The world, I discovered, was not all that interested. I wandered around my early 20s, paying rent and reading classifieds, and wondering why the lights were not turning green for me. My dream was to be a famous musician. I played the piano. But after several years of dark, empty nightclubs, broken promises, bands that kept breaking up, and producers who seemed excited about everyone but me, the dream soured. I was failing for the first time in my life. At the same time, I had my first serious encounter with death. My favorite uncle, my mother's brother, the man who had taught me music, taught me to drive, teased me about girls, thrown me a football, that one adult whom I targeted as a child and said, "That's who I want to be when I grow up," died of pancreatic cancer at the age of 44. He was a short, handsome man with a thick mustache, and I was with him for the last year of his life, living in an apartment just below his. I watched his strong body wither, then bloat, saw him suffer night after night, doubled over at the dinner table, pressing on his stomach, his eyes shut, his mouth contorted in pain. "Ah, God," he would moan. The rest of us, my aunt, his 2 young sons, me, stood there silently, cleaning the plates, averting our eyes. It was the most helpless I have ever felt in my life. One night in May, my uncle and I sat on the balcony of his apartment. It was breezy and warm. He looked out toward the horizon and said, through gritted teeth, that he wouldn't be able to see his kids into the next school year. He asked if I would look after them. I told him not to talk that way. He stared at me sadly. He died a few weeks later. After the funeral, my life changed. I felt as if time were suddenly precious water going down an open drain, and I could not move quickly enough. No more playing music at half-empty nightclubs, no more writing songs in my apartment, songs that no one would hear. I returned to school. I earned a master's degree in journalism and took the first job offered as a sports writer. Instead of chasing my own fame, I wrote about famous athletes chasing theirs. I worked for newspapers and freelanced for magazines. I worked at a pace that knew no hours, no limits. I would wake up in the morning, brush my teeth, and sit down at the typewriter in the same clothes I had slept in. My uncle had worked for a corporation and hated it. Same thing every day, and I was determined never to end up like him. I bounced from New York to Florida and eventually took a job in Detroit as a columnist for the Detroit Free Press. The sports appetite in that city was insatiable. They had professional teams in football, basketball, baseball, and hockey, and it matched my ambition. In a few years, I was not only penning columns, I was writing sports books, doing radio shows, and appearing regularly on TV, spouting my opinions on rich football players and hypocritical college sports programs. I was part of the media thunderstorm that now soaks our country. I was in demand. I stopped renting, I started buying. I bought a house on a hill. I bought cars, I invested in stocks and built a portfolio. I was cranked into a 5th gear, and everything I did on a deadline. I exercised like a demon. I drove my car at breakneck speed. I made more money than I had ever figured to see. I met a dark-haired woman named Janine who somehow loved me despite my schedule and constant absences. We married after a 7-year courtship. I was back to work a week after the wedding. I told her, and myself, that we would one day start a family, something she wanted very much, but that day never came. Instead, I buried myself in accomplishments because with accomplishments, I believed I could control things. I could squeeze in every last piece of happiness before I got sick and died, like my uncle before me, which I figured was my natural fate. As for Morrie, well, I thought about him now and then, the things he had taught me about being human and relating to others, but it was always in the distance, as if from another life. Over the years, I threw away any mail that came from Brandeis University, figuring they were only asking for money, so I did not know of Morrie's illness. The people who might have told me were long forgotten, their phone numbers buried in some packed-away box in the attic. It might have stayed that way had I not been flicking through the TV channels one night when something caught my ear. And that is the end of that chapter. I think I missed a comment right before I started reading. Talisman Solutions. You have a sufficient amount of curiosity to explore the edge cases in life It's a strength. I think I'd like to think of it that way. I think it's pretty cool when I maybe am not as afraid of these things, so it doesn't. I feel like mentally I've been very free, which is nice, while still understanding the value of each day. How can you tell someone is handsome with facial hair? Of course you can't. Unless it's covering the entire face. I don't know. Hi, Rockwell. Welcome back. Sorry about the ads. And Samavision, thanks for listening as well. Teacher, will we be tested on this book? No, I just really wanted to share it with y'all. I think it's a wonderful story that would benefit a lot of people. I find your mind so beautiful, Yeju. It's refreshing to see. Thank you. Thank you so much. I do enjoy talking to all of you about these things too. I feel like we always have good discussions. As long as it doesn't prematurely turn you excessively dark in your perspective, of course. Oh yeah, I find myself to be like I say, an optimistic nihilist. I have a little mixture of the dark and the light, where I feel like I don't let the darkness completely take over and make me feel sad all the time. I often see a lot of benefits in having kind of the ups and downs, and just having good coping mechanisms as well. No test, but a 100-page book report by the end of the day is needed. Can I have a list of titles in the Discord? I'm very invested now. You mean a list of like the books that I read? I can share some more if you guys are interested. And yeah, now we shall move on to the next chapter, which is the audio-visual. In March of 1995, a limousine carrying Ted Koppel, the host of... Wait, is it Koppel? I meant to look this up. Koppel? Is it Koppel? 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 Okay, thank you. A limousine carrying Ted Koppel, the host of ABC TV's Nightline, pulled up to the snow-covered curb outside Morrie's house in West Newton, Massachusetts. Morrie was in a wheelchair full-time now, getting used to helpers lifting him like a heavy sack from the chair to the bed and the bed to the chair. He had begun to cough while eating, and chewing was a chore. His legs were dead. He would never walk again. Yet he refused to be depressed. Instead, Morrie had become a lightning rod of ideas. He jotted down his thoughts on yellow pads, envelopes, folders, scrap paper. He wrote bite-sized philosophies about living with death's shadow. Accept what you are able to do and what you are not able to do. Accept the past as past without denying it or discarding it. Learn to forgive yourself and to forgive others. Don't assume that it's too late to get involved. After a while, he had more than 50 of these aphorisms, which he shared with his friends. One friend, a fellow Brandeis professor named Morrie Steen, was so taken with the words that he sent them to a Boston Globe reporter who came out and wrote a long feature story on Morrie. The headline read, "A Professor's Final Course, His Own Death." The article caught the eye of a producer from the Nightline show who brought it to Koppel in Washington, D.C. "Take a look at this," the producer said. Next thing you knew, there were cameramen in Morrie's living room, and Koppel's limousine was in front of the house. Several of Morrie's friends and family members had gathered to meet Koppel, and when the famous man entered the house, they buzzed with excitement. All except Morrie, who wheeled himself forward, raised his eyebrows, and interrupted the clamor with his high sing-song voice. "Ted, I need to check you out before I agree to do this interview." There was an awkward moment of silence, and the two men were ushered into the study. The door was shut. "Man," one friend whispered outside the door, "I hope Ted goes easy on Morrie." "I hope Morrie goes easy on Ted," said the other. Inside the office, Morrie motioned for Koppel to sit down. He crossed his hands in his lap and smiled. "Tell me something close to your heart," Morrie began. "My heart?" Koppel studied the old man. "All right," he said cautiously, and he spoke about his children. They were close to his heart, weren't they? Good, Morrie said. Now tell me something about your faith. Koppel was uncomfortable. I don't usually talk about such things with people I've only known for a few minutes. Ted, I'm dying, Morrie said, peering over his glasses. I don't have a lot of time here. Koppel laughed. All right, faith. He quoted a passage from Marcus Aurelius, something he felt strongly about. Morrie nodded. Now let me ask you something, Koppel said. Have you ever seen my program? Morrie shrugged. Twice, I think. Twice? That's all? Don't feel bad. I've only seen Oprah once. Well, the 2 times you saw my show, what did you think? Morrie paused. To be honest? Yes. I thought you were a narcissist. Koppel burst into laughter. I'm too ugly to be a narcissist, he said. Soon the cameras were rolling in front of the living room fireplace with Koppel in his crisp blue suit and Morrie in his shaggy gray sweater. He had refused fancy clothes or makeup for this interview. His philosophy was that death should not be embarrassing. He was not about to powder its nose. Because Morrie sat in his wheelchair, the camera never caught his withered legs. And because he was still able to move his hands, Morrie always spoke with both hands waving. He showed great passion when explaining how you'd face the end of life. Ted, he said, when all this started, I asked myself, am I going to withdraw from the world like most people do, or am I going to live? I decided I'm going to live, or at least try to live, the way I want, with dignity, with courage, with humor, with composure. There are some mornings when I cry and mourn for myself, but some mornings I'm so angry and bitter, but it doesn't last too long. Then I get up and say, I want to live. So far, I've been able to do it. Will I be able to continue? I don't know, but I'm betting on myself that I will. Koppel seemed extremely taken with Morrie. He asked about the humility that death induced. Well, Fred, Morrie said accidentally, then he quickly corrected himself. I mean, Ted. Now that's inducing humility, Koppel said, laughing. The 2 men spoke about the afterlife. They spoke about Morrie's increasing dependency on other people. He already needed help eating and sitting and moving from place to place. What, Koppel asked, did Morrie dread the most about his slow, insidious decay? Morrie paused. He asked if he could say this certain thing on television. Koppel said, go ahead. Morrie looked straight into the eyes of the most famous interviewer in America. Well, Ted, one day, someone's going to have to wipe my ass. The program aired on a Friday night. It began with Ted Koppel from behind the desk in Washington, his voice booming with authority. Who is Morrie Schwartz, he said, and why, by the end of the night, are so many of you going to care about him? 1,000 miles away, in my house on the hill, I was casually flipping through channels. I heard these words from the TV set. Who is Morrie Schwartz? And went numb. And this is also a flashback. It is our first class together, in the spring of 1976. I enter Morrie's large office, and notice the seemingly countless books that line the wall, shelf after shelf. Books on sociology, philosophy, religion, psychology. There's a large rug on the hardwood floor, and a window that looks out on the campus walk. Only a dozen or so students are there, fumbling with notebooks and syllabi. Most of them wear jeans and earth shoes and plaid flannel shirts. I tell myself it will not be easy to cut a class this small. Maybe I shouldn't take it. Mitchell? Morrie says, reading from the attendance list. I raise a hand. Do you prefer Mitch, or is Mitchell better? I have never been asked this by a teacher. I do a double take at this guy in his yellow turtleneck and green corduroy pants, the silver hair that falls on his forehead. He is smiling. Mitch, I say. Mitch is what my friends call me. Well, Mitch it is then, Morrie says, as if closing a deal. And Mitch? Yes? I hope that one day you will think of me as your friend. And that is the end of that chapter. And thank you, Throw for Fun, for the 45 stream streak. Oh my goodness. Thank you. So Ted Koppel is a British-born TV commentator that made Day of the Crisis on ABC Network. Oh, thank you for the context. And Welcome to those who are new here, by the way, who have just followed in the past like 10 minutes. I see we have a few new people in our community, so welcome. I usually do music streams, but we are reading this book today. One year in high school, a history teacher asked each of us if we went by any nicknames out of boredom. I said, I go by "Hey You Kid," and he actually called me that all year. Well, actually, that's a pretty great joke to make. I wish I had done something like that. Thanks, Chase Yama. And Afro Sage, I'm glad you're invested. I feel bad for anyone who's walking in here late, but I hope that there's a little bit of wisdom in every chapter, regardless of where you step in. I do feel like the book kind of works that way, where it doesn't really matter where you walk in. You can kind of still take something from every chapter. So we will move on. First I'll drink this water. Alright, this is called The Orientation. As I turned the rental car onto Morrie Street in West Newton, a quiet suburb of Boston, I had a cup of coffee in one hand and a cellular phone between my ear and shoulder. I was talking to a TV producer about a piece we were doing. My eyes jumped from the digital clock. My return flight was in a few hours, to the mailbox numbers on the tree-lined suburban street. The car radio was on the all-news station. This was how I operated, 5 things at once. "Roll back the tape," I said to the producer. "Let me hear that part again." "Okay," he said. "It's going to take a second." Suddenly I was up upon the house. I pushed the brakes, spilling coffee into my lap. As the car stopped, I caught a glimpse of a large Japanese maple tree and 3 figures sitting near it in the driveway. A young man and a middle-aged woman flanking a small old man in a wheelchair. Morrie. At the sight of my old professor, I froze. "Hello," the producer said in my ear. "Did I lose you?" I had not seen him in 16 years. His hair was thinner, nearly white, and his face was gaunt. I suddenly felt unprepared for this reunion. For one thing, I was stuck on the phone, and I hoped that he hadn't noticed my arrival so that I could drive around the block a few more times, finish my business, get mentally ready. But Morrie, this new withered version of a man I had once known so well, was smiling at the car, hands folded in his lap, waiting for me to emerge. "Hey," the producer said again. "Are you there?" For all the time we'd spent together, for all the kindness and patience Morrie had shown me when I was young, I should have dropped the phone and jumped from the car, run and held him and kissed him low. Instead, I killed the engine and sunk down off the seat as if I were looking for something. Yeah, I'm here," I whispered, and continued my conversation with the TV producer until we were finished. I did what I had become best at doing. I tended to my work, even while my dying professor waited on his front lawn. I am not proud of this, but that is what I did. Now, 5 minutes later, Morrie was hugging me, his thinning hair rubbing against my cheek. I had told him I was searching for my keys. That's what had taken me so long in the car. And I squeezed him tighter, as if I could crush my little lie. Although the spring sunshine was warm, he wore a windbreaker, and his legs were covered by a blanket. He smelled faintly sour, the way people on medication sometimes do. With his face pressed close to mine, I could hear his labored breathing in my ear. "My old friend," he whispered. "You've come back at last." He rocked against me, not letting go, his hands reaching up from my elbows as I bent over him. I was surprised at such affection after all these years, but then, in the stone walls I had built between my present and my past, I had forgotten how close we once were. I remembered graduation day, the briefcase, his tears at my departure, and I swallowed because I knew, deep down, that I was no longer the good gift-bearing student he remembered. I only hoped that, for the next few hours, I could fool him. Inside the house, we sat at a walnut dining room table near a window that looked out on the neighbor's house. Morrie fussed with his wheelchair, trying to get comfortable. As was his custom, he wanted to feed me, and I said all right. One of the helpers, a stout Italian woman named Connie, cut up bread and tomatoes and brought containers of chicken salad, hummus, and tabbouleh. She also brought some pills. Morrie looked at them and sighed. His eyes were more sunken than I remembered them, and his cheekbones more pronounced. This gave him a harsher, older look, until he smiled, of course, and the sagging cheeks gathered up like curtains. "Mitch," he said softly, "you know that I'm dying." I knew. "All right, then." Morrie swallowed the pills, put down the paper cup, inhaled deeply, then let it out. "Shall I tell you what it's like?" "What it's like? To die?" "Yes," he said. Although I was unaware of it, our last class had just begun. It is my freshman year. Morrie is older than most of the teachers, and I'm younger than most of the students, having left high school a year early. To compensate for my youth on campus, I wear old gray sweatshirts and box at a local gym and walk around with an unlit cigarette in my mouth, even though I do not smoke. I drive a beat-up Mercury Cougar with the windows down and the music up. I seek my identity in toughness. But it is Morrie's softness that draws me, and because he does not look at me like I'm a kid trying to be more than I am, I relax. I finish that first course with him and enroll for another. He is an easy marker. He does not care much for grades. One year, they say, during the Vietnam War, Morrie gave all his male students A's to help them keep their student deferments. I begin to call Morrie Coach, the way I used to address my high school track coach. Morrie likes the nickname. "Coach," he says. "All right, I'll be your coach, and you can be my player. You can play all the lovely parts of life that I'm too old for now." Sometimes we eat together in the cafeteria. Morrie, to my delight, is even more of a slob than I am. He talks instead of chewing, laughs with his mouth open, delivers a passionate thought through a mouthful of egg salad, the little yellow pieces spewing from his teeth. It cracks me up. The whole time I know him, I have two overwhelming desires: to hug him and to give him a napkin. And that's the end of that chapter. Also, thank you so much for the gift sub, Talisman Solutions, to Cherry Venus. Thank you very much. Are we talking about detention? To schedule a parent-teacher conference? Does it feel like school now? This is actually, it's nostalgic. It's reminding me of when we used to read in school. You'd volunteer to read. I enjoyed reading aloud in school too. I think it helped me get over some of my fears of talking in front of people. I just liked reading, so I'd always try to volunteer to read here and there. How's life been? It's been good. I've been reading a lot of good books, and just, I've been sore, though, from Pilates. Student deferments would have put this portion in the Vietnam War era in the USA, so before 1975. Yeah, so this was, something that, Mitch, the author, had not, he himself had not witnessed this, but it's just what had been going around the news about, not news, what people had been saying about Morrie. So that part was in italics. I can definitely specify next time, because they have, in between chapters, at the end of every chapter, there's usually a flashback or something. Yeah, something in italics. So, I think it persists. Yes, it does persist. Okay. Next chapter is the classroom. The sun beamed in through the dining room window, lighting up the hardwood floor. We had been talking there for nearly 2 hours. The phone rang yet again, and Morrie kept asking his helper, Connie, to get it. She had been jotting the callers' names in Morrie's small black appointment book. Friends, meditation teachers, a discussion group, someone who wanted to photograph him for a magazine. It was clear I was not the only one interested in visiting my old professor. The Nightline appearance had made him something of a celebrity. But I was impressed with, perhaps even a bit envious, of all the friends Morrie seemed to have. I thought about the buddies that circled my orbit back in college. Where had they gone? You know, Mitch, now that I'm dying, I've become much more interesting to people. You were always interesting. Oh, Morrie smiled. You're kind. No, I'm not, I thought. Here's the thing, he said. People see me as a bridge. I'm not as alive as I used to be, but I'm not yet dead. I'm sort of in between. He coughed and then regained his smile. I'm on the last great journey here, and people want me to tell them what to pack. The phone rang again. Morrie, can you talk? Connie asked. I'm visiting with my old pal now, he announced. Let them call back. I cannot tell you why he received me so warmly. I was hardly the promising student who had left him 16 years earlier. Had it not been for Nightline, Morrie might have died without ever seeing me again. I had no good excuse for this, except for the one that everyone these days seems to have. I had become too wrapped up in the siren song of my own life. I was busy. What happened to me? I asked myself. Morrie's high, smoky voice took me to my university years, when I thought rich people were evil. A shirt and tie were prison clothes, and life without freedom to get up and go, motorcycle beneath you, breeze in your face, down the streets of Paris, into the mountains of Tibet, was not a good life at all. What happened to me? The 80s happened. The 90s happened. Death and sickness and getting fat and going bald happened. I traded lots of dreams for a bigger paycheck, and I never even realized I was doing it. Yet here was Morrie, talking with the wonder of our college years, as if I'd simply been on a long vacation. Have you found someone to share your heart with? He asked. Are you giving to your community? Are you at peace with yourself? Are you trying to be as human as you can be? I squirmed, wanting to show that I had been grappling deeply with such questions. What happened to me? I once promised myself I would never work for money, that I would join the Peace Corps, that I would live in beautiful, inspirational places. Instead, I had been in Detroit for 10 years now, at the same workplace, using the same bank, visiting the same barber. I was 37, more efficient than in college, tied to computers and modems and cell phones. I wrote articles about rich athletes who, for the most part, could not care less about people like me. I was no longer young for my peer group, nor did I walk around in gray sweatshirts with unlit cigarettes in my mouth. I did not have long discussions over egg salad sandwiches about the meaning of life. My days were full, yet I remained much of the time unsatisfied. What happened to me? Coach, I said suddenly, remembering the nickname. Morrie beamed. That's me. I'm still your coach. He laughed and resumed his eating, a meal he'd started 40 minutes earlier. I watched him now, his hands working gingerly as if he were learning to use them for the very first time. He could not press down hard with the knife. His fingers shook. Each bite was a struggle. He chewed the food finely before swallowing, and sometimes it slid out of the sides of his lips so that he had to put down what he was holding to dab his face with a napkin. The skin from his wrist to his knuckles was dotted with age spots, and it was loose, like skin hanging from a chicken soup bone. For a while, we just ate like that. A sick old man, a healthy younger man, both absorbing the quiet of the room. I would say it was an embarrassed silence, but I seemed to be the only one embarrassed. Dying, Morrie said suddenly, is the only one thing to be sad over, Mitch. Living unhappily is something else. So many of the people who come to visit me are unhappy. Why? Well, for one thing, the culture we have does not make people feel good about themselves. We're teaching the wrong things. And you have to be strong enough to say, if the culture doesn't work, don't buy it. Create your own. Most people can't do it. They're more unhappy than me, even in my current condition. I may be dying, but I am surrounded by loving, caring souls. How many people can say that? I was astonished by his complete lack of self-pity. Morrie, who could no longer dance, swim, bathe, or walk. Morrie, who could no longer answer his own door, dry himself after a shower, or even roll over in bed. How could he be so accepting? I watched him struggle with his fork, picking at a piece of tomato, missing it the first 2 times. A pathetic scene, and yet I could not deny that sitting in his presence was almost magically serene, the same calm breeze that soothed me back in college. I shot a glance at my watch, force of habit. It was getting late, and I thought about changing my plane reservation home. Then Morrie did something that haunts me to this day. You know how I'm going to die, he said. I raised my eyebrows. I'm going to suffocate. Yes, my lungs, because of my asthma, can't handle the disease. It's moving up my body, this ALS. It's already got my legs. Pretty soon it'll get my arms and hands, and when it hits my lungs... He shrugged his shoulders. I'm sunk. I have no idea what to say, so I say, well, you never know. Morrie closed his eyes. I know, Mitch. You mustn't be afraid of my dying. I've had a good life, and we all know it's going to happen. I maybe have 4 or 5 months. Come on, I said nervously. Nobody can say. I can, he said softly. There's even a little test. The doctor showed me. A test? Inhale a few times. I did as he said. Now once more, but this time, when you exhale, count as many numbers as you can before you take another breath. I quickly exhaled the numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I reached 70 before my breath was gone. Good, Morrie said. You have healthy lungs. Now, watch what I do. He inhaled, then began his number count in a soft, wobbly voice. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. He stopped, gasping for air. When the doctor first asked me to do this, I could reach 23. Now it's 18. He closed his eyes, shook his head. My tank is almost empty. I tapped my thighs nervously. That was enough for one afternoon. Come back and see your old professor, Morrie said when I hugged him goodbye. I promised I would, and I tried not to think about the last time I promised this. Now this is a flashback. In the campus bookstore, I shopped for the items on Morrie's reading list. I purchased books that I never knew existed, titles such as Youth, Identity and Crisis, I and Thou, The Divided Self. Before college, I did not know the study of human relations could be considered scholarly. Until I met Morrie, I did not believe it. But his passion for books is real and contagious. We would begin to talk seriously sometimes, after class, when the room is emptied. He asks me questions about my life, then quotes lines from Erich Fromm, Martin Buber, Erik Erikson. Often, he defers to their words, footnoting his own advice, even though he obviously thought the same things himself. It is at these times that I realize he is indeed a professor, not an uncle. One afternoon I am complaining about the confusion of my age, what is expected of me versus what I want for myself. Have I told you about the tension of opposites, he says. The tension of opposites? Life is a series of pulls back and forth. You want to do one thing, but you are bound to do something else. Something hurts you, yet you know it shouldn't. You take certain things for granted, even when you know you should never take anything for granted. A tension of opposites, like a pull on a rubber band, and most of us live somewhere in the middle. Sounds like a wrestling match, I say. A wrestling match, he laughs. Yes, you could describe life that way. So which side wins, I ask. Which side wins? He smiles at me, the crinkled eyes, the crooked teeth. Love wins. Love always wins. And that is the end of that chapter, the classroom. Right, is that what we, yeah, that's what we just read. Oh, hi, Vixen. Thank you. What's the point of learning new words if you're never going to use them? I mean, sometimes you can just force it. Force yourself to use them. Hi, Paul. Thank you so much for being here. ABCDMLG. Thank you. Yeju is an avid reader, enthusiastic and vigorous pursuit. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And yeah, I feel like even though I read this so recently, it's still such a treat to read again. Hey, we've made it through a good portion of the book already. Look at that. Progress, everyone. I remember the book tour when this book came out. Oh, really? It's fascinating. I know that they recently released another book that Morrie himself had written, or they like compiled some of his writings. Yeah, but it's very different from this book, apparently. It's a nice last few lines for that chapter. It was, yes. Yes. So, I think we can move on to the next chapter. I still have it in me to keep reading, so. You'd pay for a Yeju audio. Thank you. I will upload this VOD to YouTube, so if anyone misses it and they want to catch up on the reading, they can. Yeah, if anyone was late here, by the way, and then the next time we read it, I can, you can be caught up. Recourse, thank you so much for the 5 gift subs. Thank you for your support. And Mada, thank you for the Prime sub, too. It means a lot. I'm just reading, so I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh, this is not the usual stream, so I don't know if people will enjoy. But I'm glad that you feel so inclined to gift subs. Thank you. How many chapters are there? I think they're quite a lot. Let's see. I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, I think. But they're like all pretty short. It's not that long of a book, yes. Had to read this for an English class in college. I would definitely assign this if I were an English teacher. Hi, Terry. Hermit Bob, thank you for subscribing. We're going to move on to the next chapter, which is called Taking Attendance. I flew to London a few weeks later. I was covering Wimbledon, the world's premier tennis competition, and one of the few events where I go to where the crowd never boos and no one is drunk in the parking lot. England was warm and cloudy, and each morning I walked the tree-lined streets near the tennis courts, passing teenagers queued up for leftover tickets and vendors selling strawberries and cream. Outside the gate was a newsstand that sold a half-dozen colorful British tabloids featuring photos of topless women, paparazzi pictures of the royal family, horoscopes, sports, lottery contests, and a wee bit of actual news. Their top headline of the day was written on a small chalkboard that leaned against the latest stack of papers and usually read something like, "Diana, in row with Charles," or "Gazatu team, give me millions." People scooped up these tabloids, devoured their gossip, and on previous trips to England, I had always done the same. But now, for some reason, I found myself thinking about Morrie whenever I read anything silly or mindless. I kept picturing him there, in the house with the Japanese maple and the hardwood floors, counting his breath, squeezing out every moment with his loved ones, while I spent so many hours on things that meant absolutely nothing to me personally. Movie stars, supermodels, the latest noise out of Princess Di or Madonna or John F. Kennedy Jr. In a strange way, I envied the quality of Morrie's time, even as I lamented its diminishing supply. Why did we bother with all the distractions we did? Back home, the O.J. Simpson trial was in full swing, and there were people who surrendered their entire lunch hours watching it, then taped the rest so they could watch more at night. They didn't know O.J. Simpson. They didn't know anyone involved in the case. Yet they gave up days and weeks of their lives addicted to someone else's drama. I remember what Morrie said during our visit. The culture we have does not make people feel good about themselves, and you have to be strong enough to say, if the culture doesn't work, don't buy it. Morrie, true to these words, had developed his own culture long before he got sick. Discussion groups, walks with friends, dancing to his music in the Harvard Square Church. He started a project called the Greenhouse, where poor people could receive mental health services. He read books to find new ideas for his classes, visited with colleagues, kept up with old students, wrote letters to distant friends. He took more time eating and looking at nature and wasted no time in front of TV sitcoms or movies of the week. He had created a cocoon of human activities, conversation, interaction, affection, and it filled his life like an overflowing soup bowl. I had also developed my own culture. Work. I did 4 or 5 media jobs in England, juggling them like a clown. I spent 8 hours a day on a computer, feeding my stories back to the States. Then I did TV pieces, traveling with a crew throughout parts of London. I also phoned in radio reports every morning and afternoon. This was not an abnormal load. Over the years, I had taken my labor as my companion and had moved everything else to the side. In Wimbledon, I ate meals at my little wooden work cubicle and thought nothing of it. On one particularly crazy day, a crush of reporters had tried to chase down Andre Agassi and his famous girlfriend, Brooke Shields, and I had gotten knocked over by a British photographer who barely muttered sorry before sweeping past, his huge metal lenses strapped around his neck. I thought of something else Morrie had told me. So many people walk around with a meaningless life. They seem half asleep even when they're busy doing things they think are important. This is because they are chasing the wrong things. The way you get meaning into your life is to devote yourself to loving others, devote yourself to your community around you, and devote yourself to creating something that gives you purpose and meaning. I knew he was right. Not that I did anything about it. At the end of the tournament and the countless cups of coffee I drank to get through it, I closed my computer, cleaned out my cubicle, and went back to the apartment to pack. It was late. The TV was nothing but fuzz. I flew to Detroit, arrived late in the afternoon, and dragged myself home and went to sleep. I awoke to a jolting piece of news. The unions at my newspaper had gone on strike. The place was shut down. There were picketers at the front entrance and marchers chanting up and down the street. As a member of the union, I had no choice. I was suddenly, and for the first time in my life, out of a job, out of a paycheck, and pitted against my employers. Union leaders called my home and warned me against any contact with my former editors, many of whom were my friends, telling me to hang up if they tried to call and plead their case. "We're going to fight until we win," the union leaders swore, sounding like soldiers. I felt confused and depressed. Although the TV and radio work were nice supplements, the newspaper had been my lifeline, my oxygen. When I saw my stories in print each morning, I knew that, in at least one way, I was alive. Now it was gone, and as the strike continued, the first day, the second day, the third day, there were worried phone calls and rumors that this could go on for months. Everything I had known was upside down. There were sporting events each night, and I would have gone to cover. Instead, I stayed home, watched them on TV. I had grown used to thinking readers somehow needed my column. I was stunned at how easily things went on without me. After a week of this, I picked up the phone and dialed Morrie's number. Connie brought him to the phone. "You're coming to visit me," he said, less a question than a statement. Well, could I? How about Tuesday? Tuesday would be good, I said. Tuesday would be fine. And this is a flashback. In my sophomore year, I take 2 more of his courses. We go beyond the classroom, meeting now and then just to talk. I have never done this before with an adult who is not a relative, yet I feel comfortable doing it with Morrie, and he seems comfortable making the time. "Where shall we visit today?" he asks cheerily when I enter his office. In the spring, we sit under a tree outside the sociology building, and in the winter, we sit by his desk, me in my gray sweatshirt and Adidas sneakers, Morrie in his Rockport shoes and corduroy pants. Each time we talk, he listens to me ramble. Then he tries to pass on some sort of life lesson. He warns me that money is not the most important thing, contrary to the popular view on campus. He tells me I need to be fully human. He speaks of the alienation of youth and the need for connectedness with the society around me. Some of these things I understand, some I do not. It makes no difference. The discussions give me an excuse to talk to him, fatherly conversations I cannot have with my own father, who would like me to be a lawyer. Morrie hates lawyers. "What do you want to do when you get out of college?" he asks. "I want to be a musician," I say. "Piano player." "Wonderful," he says, "but that's a hard life." "Yeah, a lot of sharks. That's what I hear." "Still," he says, "if you really want it, then you'll make your dream happen." I want to hug him, to thank him for saying that, but I am not that open. I only nod instead. "I'll bet you play piano with a lot of pep," he says. I laugh. "Pep?" He laughs back. "Pep, what's the matter? They don't say that anymore?" And that is the end of that chapter. Landy, thank you for the 3-stream streak. Oh wow, I see. Hi, Anni. Thank you. Moda, thank you as well. Thanks all for listening. Can you read more italics? You want me to read more like it's in italics? This book is Tuesdays with Morrie. Yeah, I read with a lot of pep. Thank you. Do I literally look like a grandma? I guess I do kind of. I got the glasses and then the floral prints, and yeah, maybe. Thank you. We've got I think we can read a bit more. I wanna get into like the meetings. And yes, if you are interested, my sister also streams on Twitch. She does a lot of singing and chatting, but she does not really stream that often. So every time you catch her stream, it is a special privilege. And I will move on. You wait every week for that lucky stream. Yeah. Thank you all for supporting her as well, though. In all seriousness, she is one of the most important people in my life, and my extremely, like, my bestest friend, as well as my actual older sister. So thank you for the love and support you show for her as well. You sub for her for 15 months. She has only done 15 streams. It's like $5 per stream. Skag, that's just the reality. This next chapter is called The First Tuesday We Talk About the World. Oh, you're a tier 3. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna have a talk with her. Connie opened the door and let me in. Morrie was in his wheelchair by the kitchen table, wearing a loose cotton shirt and even looser black sweatpants. They were loose because his legs had atrophied beyond normal clothing size. You could get 2 hands around his thighs and have your fingers touch. Had he been able to stand, he'd have been no more than 5 feet tall, and he'd probably have fit into his 6th grader's jeans. I got you something, I announced, holding up a brown paper bag. I had stopped on my way from the airport at a nearby supermarket and purchased some turkey, potato salad, macaroni salad, and bagels. I knew there was plenty of food at the house, but I wanted to contribute something. I was so powerless to help Morrie otherwise, and I remembered his fondness for eating. "Ah, so much food," he sang. "Well, now you have to eat it with me." We sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by wicker chairs. This time, without the need to make up 16 years of information, we slid quickly into the familiar waters of our old college dialogue. Morrie asking questions, listening to my replies, stopping like a chef to sprinkle in something I'd forgotten or hadn't realized. He asked about the newspaper strike, and true to form, he couldn't understand why both sides didn't simply communicate with each other and solve their problems. I told him not everyone was as smart as he was. Occasionally, he had to stop to use the bathroom, a process that took quite some time. Connie and I would wheel him to the toilet, then lift him from the chair and support him as he urinated into the beaker. Each time he came back, he looked tired. "Do you remember when I told Ted Koppel that pretty soon someone was going to have to wipe my ass?" he said. I laughed. "You don't forget a moment like that." "Well, I think that day is coming." "That one bothers me." "Why?" "Because it's the ultimate sign of dependency. Someone wiping your bottom. But I'm working on it. I'm trying to enjoy the process." "Enjoy it?" "Yes. After all, I get to be a baby one more time." "That's a unique way of looking at it." "Well, I have to look at life uniquely now. Let's face it. I can't go shopping. I can't take care of the bank accounts. I can't take out the garbage. But I can sit here with my dwindling days and look at what I think is important in life. I have both the time and the reason to do that." "So," I said, in a reflexively cynical response, "I guess the key to finding the meaning of life is to stop taking out the garbage?" He laughed, and I was relieved that he did. As Connie took the plates away, I noticed a stack of newspapers that had obviously been read before I got there. "You bother keeping up with the news?" I asked. "Yes," Morrie said. "Do you think that's strange? Do you think because I'm dying I shouldn't care what happens in this world?" "Maybe." He sighed. "Maybe you're right. Maybe I shouldn't care. After all, I won't be around to see how it all turns out. But it's hard to explain, Mitch. Now that I'm suffering, I feel closer to people who suffer than I ever did before. The other night on TV, I saw people in Bosnia running across the street, getting fired upon, killed, innocent victims, and I just started to cry. I feel their anguish as if it were my own. I don't know any of these people, but how can I put this? I'm almost drawn to them." His eyes got moist, and I tried to change the subject, but he dabbed his face and waved me off. "I cry all the time now," he said. "Never mind." Amazing, I thought. I worked in the news business. I covered stories where people died. I interviewed grieving family members. I even attended the funerals. I never cried. Morrie, for the suffering of people half a world away, was weeping. Is this what comes at the end? I wondered. Maybe death is the great equalizer, the one big thing that can finally make strangers shed a tear for one another. Morrie honked loudly into the tissue. This is okay with you, isn't it? Men crying? Sure, I said, too quickly. He grinned. Ah, Mitch, I'm gonna loosen you up. One day, I'm gonna show you it's okay to cry. Yeah, I said. Yeah, he said. We laughed because he used to say the same thing nearly 20 years earlier. Mostly on Tuesdays. In fact, Tuesday had always been our day together. Most of my courses with Morrie were on Tuesdays. He had office hours on Tuesdays, and when I wrote my senior thesis, which was pretty much Morrie's suggestion right from the start, it was on Tuesdays that we sat together by his desk or in the cafeteria or on the steps of Perlman Hall going over the work. So it seemed only fitting that we were back together on a Tuesday, here in the house with the Japanese maple out front. As I readied to go, I mentioned this to Morrie. We're Tuesday people, he said. Tuesday people, I repeated. Morrie smiled. Mitch, you asked about caring for people I don't even know. But can I tell you the thing I'm learning the most with this disease? What's that? The most important thing in life is to learn how to give out love and to let it come in. His voice dropped to a whisper. Let it come in. We think we don't deserve love. We think if we let it in, we'll become too soft. But a wise man named Levine said it was right. He said, love is the only rational act. I think it's Levine, sorry. He repeated it carefully, pausing for effect. Love is the only rational act. I nodded like a good student, and he exhaled weakly. I leaned over to give him a hug, and then, although it is not really like me, I kissed him on the cheek. I felt his weakened hands on my arms, the thin stubble of his whiskers brushing my face. So you'll come back next Tuesday? He whispered. And this is a flashback. He enters the classroom, sits down, doesn't say anything. He looks at us, we look at him. At first, there are a few giggles, but Morrie only shrugs, and eventually a deep silence falls, and we begin to notice the smallest sounds, the radiator humming in the corner of the room, the nasal breathing of one of the fat students. Some of us are agitated. When is he going to say something? We squirm, check our watches. A few students look out the window, trying to be above it all. This goes on a good 15 minutes before Morrie finally breaks in with a whisper. What's happening here? He asks. And slowly a discussion begins, as Morrie has wanted all along, about the effect of silence on human relations. Why are we embarrassed by silence? What comfort do we find in all the noise? I am not bothered by the silence. For all the noise I make with my friends, I am still not comfortable talking about my feelings in front of others, especially not classmates. I could sit in the quiet for hours if that is what the class demanded. On my way out, Morrie stops me. You didn't say much today, he remarks. I don't know, I just didn't have anything to add. I think you have a lot to add. In fact, Mitch, you remind me of someone I knew who also liked to keep things to himself when he was younger. Who? Me. And that is the end of that chapter. Thank you, Juatista, for the 3-stream streak. And Lord Corundum, thank you for the bits. So Mitch is basically a young Morrie. Well, I suppose they definitely feel like they can relate to each other a lot. There's probably this that you can definitely sense there's a connection that Morrie feels with Mitch in particular, being able to relate, and they did seem to spend a lot of time in their university days just talking about things. I think it really goes a long way having an impactful and caring and good person who you have the privilege of meeting as a student, and they're your teacher. Like, I feel like I've only met like one teacher that really made that kind of impact on me, and I really do appreciate how much they care about their work and their students. Yeah. Have I met a younger, older you? Actually, something I felt while reading this book, I actually really related to Morrie. So a lot of the things he was saying were things that I have actually said to my friends before, friends and family, or just random people I get into conversations with. It was kind of funny hearing how many similarities there were in what he says. His whole life philosophy I could really relate to, and I felt like some of the words were taken right out of my mouth and written into this book, so that was pretty cool. Though I've never met Morrie, I think I felt an instant connection with this book because of that. I don't really think I've ever met someone who feels like they're me, though. Like never in person, maybe. But I do value meeting people who are very different from me. It really changes. Well, it really offers a different perspective, and it's always interesting to engage in conversations with people who you may never be on the same page as, and kind of pick at their brains, is how I like to say it. Each chapter is quite short, yeah. We can read about the second Tuesday. The second Tuesday, we talk about feeling sorry for yourself. Thank you, Tensai Canadian, as well. I came back the next Tuesday, and for many Tuesdays that followed. I looked forward to these visits more than one would think, considering I was flying 700 miles to sit alongside a dying man. But I seemed to slip into a time warp when I visited Morrie, and I liked myself better when I was there. I no longer rented a cellular phone for the rides from the airport. Let them wait, I told myself, mimicking Morrie. The newspaper situation in Detroit had not improved. In fact, it had grown increasingly insane, with nasty confrontations between picketers and replacement workers, people arrested, beaten, lying in the street in front of delivery trucks. In light of this, my visits with Morrie felt like a cleansing rinse of human kindness. We talked about life, and we talked about love. We talked about one of Morrie's favorite subjects, compassion, and why our society had such a shortage of it. Before my third visit, I stopped at a market called Bread and Circus. I had seen their bags in Morrie's house and figured he must like the food there, and I loaded up with plastic containers from their fresh food takeaway, things like vermicelli with vegetables and carrot soup and baklava. When I entered Morrie's study, I lifted the bags as if I'd just robbed a bank. "Food man!" I bellowed. Morrie rolled his eyes and smiled. Meanwhile, I looked for signs of the disease's progression. His fingers worked well enough to write with a pencil or hold up his glasses, but he could not lift his arms much higher than his chest. He was spending less and less time in the kitchen or living room, and more in his study, where he had a large reclining chair set up with pillows, blankets, and specially cut pieces of foam rubber that held his feet and gave support to his withered legs. He kept a bell near his side, and when his head needed adjusting or he had to go on the commode, as he referred to it, he would shake the bell, and Connie, Tony, Bertha, or Amy, his small army of home care workers, would come in. It wasn't always easy for him to lift the bell, and he got frustrated when he couldn't make it work. I asked Morrie if he felt sorry for himself. "Sometimes, in the mornings," he said. "That's when I mourn. I feel around my body, I move my fingers and my hands, whatever I can still move, and I mourn what I've lost. I mourn the slow, insidious way in which I'm dying. But then I stop mourning. Just like that. I give myself a good cry if I need it, but then I concentrate on all the good things still in my life. On the people who are coming to see me, on the stories I'm going to hear, on you, if it's a Tuesday. Because we're Tuesday people." I grinned. Tuesday people. "Mitch, I don't allow myself any more self-pity than that. A little each morning, a few tears, and that's all." I thought about all the people I knew who spent many of their waking hours feeling sorry for themselves. How useful it would be to put a daily limit on self-pity. Just a few tearful minutes then on with the day. And if Morrie could do it, with such a horrible disease. It's only horrible if you see it that way, Morrie said. It's horrible to watch my body slowly wilt away to nothing, but it's also wonderful because of all the time I get to say goodbye. He smiled. Not everyone is so lucky. I studied him in his chair, unable to stand, to wash, to pull on his pants. Lucky? Did he really say lucky? During a break when Morrie had to use the bathroom, I leafed through the Boston newspaper that sat near his chair. There was a story about a small timber town where two teenage girls tortured and killed a 73-year-old man who had befriended them, then threw a party in his trailer home and showed off the corpse. There was another story about the upcoming trial of a straight man who killed a gay man after the latter had gone on a TV talk show and said he had a crush on him. I put the paper away. Morrie was rolled back in, smiling as always, and Connie went to lift him from the wheelchair to the recliner. You want me to do that? I asked. There was a momentary silence, and I'm not even sure why I offered, but Morrie looked at Connie and said, Can you show him how to do it? Sure, Connie said. Following her instructions, I leaned over, locked my forearms under Morrie's armpits, and hooked him toward me, as if lifting a large log from underneath. Then I straightened up, hoisting him as I rose. Normally, when you lift someone, you expect their arms to tighten around your grip, but Morrie could not do this. He was mostly dead weight, and I felt his head bounce softly on my shoulder, and his body sag against me like a big damp loaf. Ah, he softly groaned. I gotcha, I said. Holding him like that moved me in a way I cannot describe, except to say I felt the seeds of death inside his shriveling frame, and as I laid him in his chair, adjusting his head on the pillows, I had the coldest realization that our time was running out, and I had to do something. And this is a flashback. It is my junior year, 1978, when disco and Rocky movies are the cultural rage. We are in an unusual sociology class at Brandeis, something Morrie calls group process. Each week we study the ways in which the students in the group interact with one another, how they respond to anger, jealousy, attention. We are human lab rats. More often than not, someone ends up crying. I refer to it as the touchy-feely course. Morrie says I should be more open-minded. On this day, Morrie says he has an exercise for us to try. We are to stand, facing away from our classmates, and fall backward, relying on another student to catch us. Most of us are uncomfortable with this, and we cannot let go for more than a few inches before stopping ourselves. We laugh in embarrassment. Finally, one student, a thin, quiet, dark-haired girl whom I notice almost always wears bulky white fisherman sweaters, crosses her arms over her chest, closes her eyes, leans back, and does not flinch, like one of those Lipton tea commercials where the model splashes into the pool. For a moment I am sure she's going to thump the floor. At the last instant, her assigned partner grabs her head and shoulders and yanks her up harshly. Whoa! Several students yell. Some clap. Morrie finally smiles. You see, he says to the girl, you closed your eyes. That was the difference. Sometimes you cannot believe what you see. You have to believe what you feel. And if you are ever going to have other people trust you, you must feel that you can trust them too, even when you're in the dark, even when you're falling. And that is the end of that chapter. Thank you. And I think that is up to where I'm going to read today. We have read a very decent portion of it, as you can see. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening, and I appreciate all of your patience and attention throughout this time. It may have felt a little dense, just like reading, but I enjoyed this story, this novel very much. Thank you. Thank you all for saying thank you. When my father died abruptly with terminal lung cancer just a few weeks after he was diagnosed with stage 4, this book resonated with me at the time. The fragility of life. Having read this book previously, it was a foreshadowing of a kind. Talisman Solutions, I'm very sorry to hear about your loss, and I know that I feel like this definitely is a book that kind of offers for people who are coping with this kind of, with maybe deaths of loved ones. it offers a lens, a different lens to see it through. And, you know, I hope that for some who are going through a tough time too, it can maybe provide some comfort as well. Or if people are feeling a little overwhelmed by life, maybe it can encourage you to put less of that pressure on yourself. Oh, thanks, Paul. And thanks, RJ. Please put this on YouTube so I can listen from the start. Yes, I can definitely upload it to YouTube. I appreciate you reading this book because I learned my Spotify has limited audiobook hours and I have to wait 5 days for it to reset. Oh, really? Oh, that's terrible. Just arrived, so a VOD would be really nice. Yes, Violin too. I'll upload it soon. Don't worry. I feel like it's... I don't know, I really appreciate books like this. I feel like they have so much timeless wisdom. And I think especially hearing things about, because this was published in 1997, and they kind of talk about problems with people nowadays or this generation, and just thinking how now reading this, that's already, you know, it's over 20 years ago that it was published, and we're still having so many of these same issues, or feeling as isolated as ever, or more so, and more lost in our work, and feeling like we don't have the opportunity to take time off or prioritize loved ones. And I feel like it's definitely proof that a lot of it has to do with our mindsets too, and I guess the pressure, societal pressure. I can pay for more hours, but I prefer free. Yeah, I don't know what the rates are like for Spotify audiobooks, or how much they have available. Yeah. But if you guys are interested in me continuing this book, I can definitely continue it at another stream too. And we'll just let people catch up with the VOD. I can, like, label it clearly or share it on Discord. Yeju reads could genuinely be a thing, certainly as much as any number of your well-demonstrated skills and abilities. Thank you. I think I get, like, more and more tongue-twisted. Some of you might have noticed, like, as I read for a long time, I start slurring more of my words. Yeah. You have to read it from start to finish again? Oh goodness. I mean, at least now we have a recording of it, so. Yeah. Yes, please, and any book you'd enjoy reading on stream. Yeah, there are just so many wonderful books I read last month, and I feel really, really lucky. I feel like I had a very full month. Like, so many wonderful authors, and I just would like to share more of that too. We only read death books? I mean, I guess these days that's me for sure. Because the other book I've been reading... Oops, sorry. When breath becomes air. This is actually falling apart. Because I guess the way it was bound... it is falling apart. Which I'm a little sad about, but... But it's okay. It was not an expensive copy of the book. It's for international sales. So I think it was probably, yeah, it wasn't that expensive. But now I feel a little more free to highlight things, because I think there's a lot of good vocabulary in this book that I would like to highlight. It's been really good so far, though. I started it yesterday. Did I start it yesterday? Something like that. It's been really good so far. 2 days? Yeah. So I'll keep you guys posted if you ever need any reading book recommendations too. Binding on newer paperbacks are terrible. Yeah, it was really, like, weak, because I don't think I wasn't really, like, straining it too much. Yeah, but it just fell apart. This is actually a picture book, and she just added a bunch of random words in their chat. It'd be really funny if I had done that. Oh, speaking of picture book, I ordered a blank picture book online, and it's green. Actually, I would like to open this. I want to see what the pages feel like, because I was like, it'd be nice to make a picture book. And I don't know what it would be about, but I just figured as like a fun activity to do on the side, I could like practice drawing and write a simple story. Let me see. Okay, let's take a look. It's a lovely green color. I think it's more saturated than how it appears on stream, I think. Ooh. Okay, the pages are very thick, so I feel like it could be possible to even incorporate like watercolor, but I don't think I'll risk it. I think I'm gonna use like colored pencils maybe. You can play with different textures. Ooh, this is so exciting. You can even put in information in the back. Very cool. You can see there are 32 pages. Thick papers can incorporate markers and stuff. Yeah, this is a lovely color. Maybe because I have the colored pencils that I can draw on like colored paper without it like regardless of the color of the paper, it'll show well. So I think I can draw a cover using that, and I have a spray to make sure that it doesn't all fade away. Yeah, just a fun personal project. I miss when books actually had words. But a sealant, yes. I hope that I actually work on this though, because I feel like I start too many projects that I don't finish. I would like to actually work on a book. Maybe. It would be nice. And now, I must head off soon because I did not eat lunch. I had a late breakfast, and then I was full for a while, but now I am hungry. So I will eat leftovers from my dinner yesterday. Oh, thank you, Vectrexer. Happy Thursday evening. It is Friday afternoon for me, but happy Thursday evening to you from the future. So thank you. Let me see. Where should we raid today? Maybe we'll go to... Oh, I see Hazy's live. Beautiful as always. Let's go to Hazy today. Are we going to continue on Tuesday? Maybe we should. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone. I really enjoyed this time. Thank you, RJ. And I'll see you all again soon. I hope you all rest well and do things you enjoy. If you're feeling tired, don't be too hard on yourself. I know that. I tend to push myself to work through sickness, and it's not always great. So I will probably spend a majority of the rest of my day resting because I'm a little tired. But thank you very much. Thank you. And we were going to Hazy, who's a really wonderful music streamer. If you don't know her, she's got a beautiful, beautiful voice. And sings a lot of like indie folk acoustic music. Yeah. And yes, I have socials if you'd like to follow on like Instagram. I post a word of the day these days if you're interested in expanding your vocabulary on my Instagram stories, because words have become a passion these days. I'm really into discovering new words. I'm also on YouTube. There's yejuniverse and yejuniverse VODs. The VODs channel, I will upload this stream again for those who were not able to catch it and would like to hear the first part of the book. I tried not to speak too much in between chapters, just so that people who miss it can have more just listening. So until next time, everyone, take care. Bye-bye, everyone.